All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Ever get that feeling like, you're hanging out with a friend and suddenly you realize your feelings are going way beyond just friends?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It can get awkward, right?
It's super common and definitely awkward. And sometimes it's even heartbreaking.
Totally. And that's what we're diving deep into today, the friend zone.
Exactly.
So we've got this really insightful podcast script, actually. It's called Escaping the Friend Zone, a 20-minute podcast script. We're going to dig into it together today and hopefully, help you figure out the why, the how, and the when.
I think that's a great way to put it. The why, the how, and the when of the friend zone.
So let's start with the basics, right? How do we even define this thing called the friend zone?
Well, I mean, on the surface, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? You've got one person who's hoping for romance, and the other person is perfectly content with just friendship.
Right, but there's got to be more to it than that, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are the deeper reasons why people end up there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot going on beneath the surface. What's interesting is that it's not always a deliberate thing, It's not like someone's intentionally putting you in this box labeled friend zone.
Okay, so it's not like some evil scheme.
No, not at all. Sometimes, it's just bad timing. Maybe when you first met, one of you wasn't really looking for a relationship.
I see. So the stars just weren't aligned.
Right. Or sometimes, and let's be honest here, sometimes the attraction just isn't mutual.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. But there's another piece to this puzzle, too. Think about how the relationship began, those early interactions. If it started off purely platonic, hanging out as buddies, being each other's shoulder to cry on, that kind of thing, it kind of sets the tone, doesn't it?
Like you're building this foundation of friendship without any romantic hints.
Precisely. And the podcast script we're looking at makes a really interesting point. Sometimes you're actually the one who might be setting yourself up for the friend zone without even realizing it.
Oh, that's a mind bender. How so?
Well, think about it. If you're always acting like just a friend, always there to offer support, laughing at their jokes but never adding any flirtatious energy, the other person is probably just going to take you at face value.
So they're picking up on the signals you're putting out.
Exactly. And that brings up a really important question for you, the listener. Have you, maybe without realizing it, given any hints that your feelings might be more than a friendly? Even a little nudge can sometimes change the whole dynamic, especially early on.
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Right.
So let's say you're listening to this and you're thinking, wait a minute, am I in the friend zone? What are some telltale signs to look out for?
Oh, there are definitely some red flags. One of the biggest ones, and this can be a real gut punch, is when your friend starts openly talking about their romantic interest in other people.
Ouch. Yeah.
And it gets even worse. They might even ask you for advice on how to handle those relationships.
That's like the ultimate friend zone move.
Right. It's like they're saying, you're great for giving advice, but I'm definitely not interested in you romantically.
So you're the wingman, but you're never going to be the main event.
Exactly. So that's one big sign. Another thing to pay attention to is the physical dynamic, or lack thereof. Think about it. Are there any lingering glances, playful touches, any of that lighthearted, flirty banter that usually happens when there's a spark?
Yeah, that makes sense.
If it's all super platonic, well, that's probably because it is platonic. They might not even be considering you in a romantic way at all. What does your gut tell you about your interactions? Do you ever sense that kind of chemistry, or is it just pure friendship?
So pay attention to those vibes, folks. The podcast script also mentions something about the effort involved in spending time together. How does that factor in?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. If you find that you're always the one initiating contact, planning things, putting in all the effort to hang out, it might mean there's a difference in how you both value the relationship.
Like you're more invested than they are.
It could be. Doesn't necessarily mean they don't like hanging out with you, but it might not be at the top of their priority list. Think about your interactions. Who usually sends that first text? Who suggests getting together next? That can tell you a lot.
Okay, those are some really helpful signs to be aware of. But now the big question. Can you actually escape the friend zone? Like, is there a way to shift the dynamic?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the podcast script offers some interesting strategies, but it's important to remember there are no guarantees.
Right, no magic spells here.
No magic cells. One of the most important things they emphasize is confidence. If you've been playing the role of the super supportive, always there friend, maybe even being a little passive, shifting your energy and showing some self-assurance can make a huge difference.
So it's about becoming more attractive overall.
Exactly. When you're confident and you're focused on your own life, your goals, your well-being, it naturally makes you more interesting to others. It's not about trying too hard to impress them. It's about becoming the best version of yourself.
I love that. So focus on you first.
Absolutely. And part of that is setting boundaries. If you've always been available at a moment's notice, try prioritizing your own needs and commitments for a change. It might seem counterintuitive, but creating a little space can actually make someone realize what they're missing.
Okay, so a little bit of healthy distance. The script also talked about trying new experiences together. What do they mean by that?
Well, think about your usual hangouts. Are they always super casual and platonic, like grabbing coffee, meeting up with a group, running errands together?
Yeah, I get it.
Try suggesting something a little different, something that could be perceived as more, well, date-like. Maybe dinner at a nice restaurant, going to a concert, something that feels a bit more special, a little more romantic.
Like you're changing the context of your interactions.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it can shift their perception and maybe even spark something different.
Okay, that makes sense. But at some point, you got to be direct, right? Like you have to actually express those romantic feelings.
Absolutely. The podcast script really emphasizes that. You can't expect the other person to read your mind. Now, it doesn't have to be some big dramatic confession of love.
Nobody wants a rom-com scene in real life.
Right. But you got to start incorporating some flirting, give them genuine compliments that go beyond just, you're a great friend. Test the waters and see how they react.
Yeah, send up those tri balloons.
Exactly. If you never signal that you're interested in something more, they might just assume you're happy with the status quo.
So clear communication is key. But what if you do all of that? You work on your confidence, you try changing the dynamic, you even put yourself out there and express your feelings, and it still goes nowhere.
That's the hard part, right?
Definitely.
The truth is, sometimes feelings aren't reciprocated no matter how much we wish they were. And trying to force a romantic relationship when the other person isn't feeling it just isn't going to work.
You can't force chemistry.
Nope. And that's when you have to ask yourself a tough question. Am I holding on to this friendship because I genuinely value it? Or am I just clinging to the hope that their feelings will magically change someday?
Wow, that's deep.
It is. And if that hope is the main thing keeping you in the friendship, the podcast script suggests that it might be healthier to step back.
As in, create some distance.
Yeah. It's not about playing games or punishing them. It's about protecting yourself. It's about recognizing your own worth and not settling for a situation that leaves you feeling constantly unfulfilled.
It's about putting yourself first.
Exactly. So, to recap, if you're feeling stuck in the friend zone, the key takeaways are work on your confidence, change up the dynamic of your interactions, be direct about your feelings, and be willing to walk away if it's not going anywhere.
So those are the actionable steps.
Yeah. But I think it's important to add a bit of nuance here. The original podcast script does acknowledge that sometimes really strong romantic relationships actually do grow out of friendship.
So it's not an impossible feat.
Not at all. When you have a strong foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and a genuine connection, romantic feelings can absolutely develop over time for both people.
So there's hope for those long game players.
There is, but the key word here is mutual. If one person is hoping for something more while the other is firmly in the friend zone, that's where things get complicated.
That's when those tough questions about self-worth and boundaries come into play.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been a lot to unpack. So many layers to navigating these feelings and friendships.
Definitely.
As a final thought for you, our listener, I'd encourage you to reflect on your own experiences. How do you balance cherishing those platonic connections while also honoring your desires for something deeper?
That's a great question.
And maybe even more importantly, ask yourself, what does it truly mean for someone to value you in the way you hope for? Are your current relationships reflecting that? It's something to really think about long after our deep dive today.
Absolutely. Food for thought for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.